So I've put a couple of things in the chat, but I will formally welcome Ms. Nageswary Thiagarajan, who is the anti-doping chief or czar and principal assistant director at the Anti-Doping Agency of Malaysia. She's also a member of the Olympic Council of Asia, and she is the one in charge of everything anti-doping. We met in Kuala Lumpur a few months back, and I had invited her to please come and share her vast experience with members of our center and on anti-doping and sports. And so, Nages, you're most welcome to the SOAS Arbitration and Dispute Resolution Center webinar. Thank you very, very much for honoring our invitation to join us. Nages is going to share her screen, and she's going to speak for about 30-40 minutes, and then we will take questions. Nages, over to you.
Thank you, Miss Emilia. I hope you can hear me clear.
Yes, we can.
Thank you for your introduction. You have been very generous with your kind words. So I had the pleasure of meeting Miss Emilia in Kuala Lumpur a couple of months back, and after a to and fro some discussions, we decided to have this webinar today. So Miss Emilia thought maybe it would be a wonderful idea to share with everyone about the anti-doping ecosystem and how it actually contributes, the anti-doping functions and work actually contributes for us to maintain a clean sports environment, a level playing field for our athletes worldwide. So before I proceed further, I would like to share my screen here. Okay, I hope this is clear.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so our webinar title is Sports and Anti-Doping. So let us enjoy the games without doping. Yes, very much true. So most often when we cheer our athletes, our podium winners, our champions on the field, we are very excited for their winning. But the next moment when they are tested and they are found positive, we find that this is actually a violation of an integrity by the athlete. It definitely will taint the games, which means someone have not been winning naturally. Okay, there have been some cheating going on in the games, and lately it has been getting more and more advanced. So this is where the anti-doping practitioners, in terms of the national anti-doping organizations or the sports associations, international federations come in, and you can see this anti-doping works is very much prevalent lately. You can see during Olympics, Paralympics, Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, you can always see anti-doping presence in all these games. So first and foremost, okay, before I go into the functions of anti-doping, I would like to first tell about the global commitments that we have in regards to anti-doping. Now, I am from Anti-Doping Agency of Malaysia. So as a national anti-doping organization who have authority over anti-doping in the country, so we have two commitments. Okay, number one is we are a signatory to the World Anti-Doping Code. Now, you might have heard of this World Anti-Doping Code. The code is harmonized, okay, harmonized across the world, the global, which means the same code or the rules is applied in the country will also be applied in Japan, for an example, or in the UK, in the US, anywhere in the world who is a signatory. So not only a NADO, a National Anti-Doping Organization, is a signatory, but there are other signatories as well. For an example, there is FIFA, there is international federations, for an example, World Athletics, the International Olympic Committee, IOC or IPC, and also major event organizers. Major event organizers, for example, those who have organized events such as Asian Games and so on. So now, this code is governed by the World Anti-Doping Agency. Now, the World Anti-Doping Agency is located in Montreal, Canada. Okay, it's very far. Montreal, Canada is very far, for an example, from Malaysia, but they have regional office across the world. Okay, they have a region for Asia-Oceania region. The World Anti-Doping Agency's regional office is in Tokyo. So most often we will deal, almost every day, we will deal with our WADA office in Japan, in Tokyo. Okay, apart from that, in regional wise, there is also um, their subsection. For example, we call the regional anti-doping organization, and because Malaysia is situated in the Southeast Asia region, so we call it the SIRADO, Southeast Asia Regional Anti-Doping Organization, who actually helps us to implement the anti-doping functions. So now, apart from that, okay, there is also the UNESCO International Convention Against Doping in Sport 2005. Now, this is the second most successful convention in UNESCO. Okay, the first most successful convention is in regards to education. So this is the second most successful convention because it has been ratified by nearly 192 countries. Okay, the reason why this convention first came into the place because, as you know, this World Anti-Doping Code is a non-governmental document. Okay, so it's very hard for governments to become a signatory. So through this UNESCO International Convention, when a government ratifies it, so the country can actually adopt the code as a rules, as anti-doping rules in the country, and also align. Okay, this gives them opportunity to create or to build legal framework and so on through this convention. So this is the anti-doping ecosystem. Okay, it's never a single task. It's a multiplayer approach. Anti-doping ecosystem is very much huge. Okay, anti-doping does not only involve the athletes. Okay, most often we thought, okay, when an athlete violates an anti-doping rules, okay, only an athlete can be sanctioned. Not necessarily. Okay, there's a possibility when an anti-doping rules is violated, there's a possibility that we can also sanction athlete support personnel. So who are athlete support personnel? It could be the coaches, the dietitians, medical doctors, could be your therapist, psychologist, nutritionist, and so on. Okay, your parents. Okay, these are athlete support personnel. If through our investigations we found that they have actually collaborated or contributed or influenced towards the anti-doping rules violations. So I'll just pick up a few of the players in this anti-doping ecosystem, and we'll just quickly go through it to see how we all are a major contributor to this overall ecosystem. Okay, as I mentioned previously, World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, located in Montreal, Canada. There are regulator responsible for harmonizing anti-doping policies. It's very good actually that the whole rules is harmonized across the global. So whatever happens in Malaysia in terms of anti-doping, we know it's the same happening in other countries. So for an example, when a Malaysian athlete is caught doping when they are in a foreign tournaments, for an example, in Bahrain or in Qatar, and for an example, in Arab Saudi. So we know when the authorities there tell us, okay, now we are going through this process or this procedure, we know what exactly the athlete is going through. It's a similar procedure that's going on in the country, in Malaysia as well. And we can actually advise the government and the athlete or the athlete support personnel accordingly, because we know that the procedures are in place and it's harmonized across the board. Okay. And other than that, an important task for all of us is we need to remain in compliance of this World Anti-Doping Code. So if you follow the anti-doping issues worldwide, you will notice that they will make announcements. WADA will make announcements that certain national anti-doping organizations have been found in compliance, or certain international federations have been found in compliance. So there are very strict process and procedures that we follow in regards to this code. So other than that, there are the national anti-doping organizations. Okay, in Malaysia, they are known as Anti-Doping Agency of Malaysia. In UK, they are known as UCAT, United Kingdom Anti-Doping, USADA in US, United States Anti-Doping Agency. In Australia, Australia is known as Sport Integrity Australia. And then there's, in regional wise, I can tell you there's DCAT, there's a Doping Control Agency of Thailand, and so on. So mostly every country, they have their own national anti-doping organizations, and we all work very closely together. Okay, the reason is because we collaborate when sometimes our athletes, they travel to these countries to participate in championships, in tournaments, in major sporting events, and so on. So our main task is to focus on all sports in the country. And from the code, from the World Anti-Doping Code, we will adopt and implement the anti-doping rules at national level. Okay, and most importantly, as part of the anti-doping functions, we also collect samples. We do testing and we collect samples from the athlete. Okay, so there are international federations. Here are some examples. World Athletics, World Aquatics. Okay, their task is to focus on one sport, okay, worldwide, and they adopt and implement rules, anti-doping rules within their sport. Okay, so though we are located very far from World Athletics and World Aquatics, this doesn't stop us from working with each other. Some of our athletes might be doing very well in this respective field in athletics and aquatics. So we work together with all these international federations. So these are some of the cooperation that we have between the National Anti-Doping Organization, for an example, like ADAMAS, and also the international federations. So as I mentioned before, there are also major event organizations, for example, IOC, which organize the Olympics, and also IPC, International Paralympic Committee, which organizes the Paralympics. Okay. And of course, when we collect samples, okay, when we collect samples from the athlete for testing, we need to send it to a WADA accredited laboratories. Okay, most often I will receive this question. Okay, so when you collect sample, can you send to any labs within the country? No, the answer will be no. It has to be WADA accredited laboratory. Okay, can you send it to the chemistry department? The answer is still no. Okay, the only lab that we can send all the samples that we have collected, regardless whether it's a blood sample or a urine sample, it can only be sent to World Anti-Doping Agency accredited labs. Okay, for an example, as for ADAMAS, we send all our samples to Doha in Qatar. Okay, there are many other labs available. For an example, there's a WADA accredited lab in Bangkok. There's one in Australia, there's in Delhi, and so on. So as for ADAMAS, we send it to Qatar in Doha. In Doha in Qatar. So again, okay, we also work very closely in law enforcement. Okay, anti-doping rules violation is not only when we found a prohibited substance in your blood sample or in your blood sample or in a urine sample, but it could be also trafficking or tampering with evidence, and so we need to work with law enforcement, not only with police. We also work together with the local drugs agency. We also work together with customs department, and so on. Like I mentioned before, the whole anti-doping ecosystem is not a single player, but is actually a multiplayer approach. Now, the anti-doping rule system, okay, is very much structured. Okay, one good thing, when I entered ADAMAS 5 years back, when I was transferred into this department, what makes me wonder is how structured, full with protocol and harmonized the rules, the anti-doping rule system are. Okay, so while everything is based on the World Anti-Doping Code, it is adapted in the country as either as the National Anti-Doping Organization rules or as the International Federation rules, and so on. There also comes another seven international standards document. So each of the functions of the anti-doping, there are separate international standards. Okay, these international standards is very much important because it contributes towards us being in compliance towards the code. Okay, what's more important is that all our work in anti-doping is made in reference to the all these international standards. Now, for example, if we run into an unusual issue or a situation, we will quickly open up this international standard and see through the guidelines how we can help to provide a solution for any of these issues that we have solved. Okay, so these documents, they are very comprehensive and written very well. Okay, and the changes happen. Okay, the code changes. The code is a living document, so the changes happens every 7 years. Okay, the reason change will happen end of this year, will be approved end of this year to be enforced in 2027. So this is how important all these technical documents for anti-doping. So the code, okay, the main purpose of the code is, of course, to protect the athlete's right to participate in doping-free sport. Okay, this is a universal program, as I said, it's harmonized across the globe, and it is adapted by different sport and anti-doping organizations. And like I did mention before, this rules is not only applicable to the athletes, but is also applicable to coaches, therapists, medical doctors, and anyone that is involved in this sporting ecosystem. So most often we always think, okay, I've always been asked whether doping is actually defined as when we find some prohibited substance in your blood sample or your urine sample. Now, in the anti-doping world, we don't use the word drugs. We are more comfortable to use the word prohibited substance. So when a prohibited substance is found in a urine sample or blood sample, you might be found doping. But that is not all. Okay, there is in the code, there's Article 2.1 to 2.11, which states all the anti-doping rules violations. So you can be violating 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. Cannot necessarily we find a prohibited substance in your sample, but you could be violating any of this from number 1 up to number 11. Okay, these are all the anti-doping rules violations. So number 1 to number 4 is only applicable to the athletes. So for an example, number 1, okay, there is a presence of a prohibited substance in the athlete sample. Okay, this could most probably lead to a suspension or a sanction, 2 years or 4 years. Okay, this can be only done to an athlete, or there's a use or attempted use. Okay, we see suddenly the athlete have actually posted on their social media trying to inject, okay, some substance, and then it turns out to be a prohibited substance. Okay, we can actually charge the athlete under use or attempted use. Okay, for example, number 3, evading, refusing, or failing. Evading, refusing, or failing, as you can see, there is 3 infraction into a single violations. Evading, for an example, a doping control officer, okay, during in competition, it could be a swimming championship, okay, and the athlete could be a podium winner, okay, number 1, okay, gold medalist. So the doping control officer went to this athlete and said, okay, you need please report to the doping control agency, and the athlete ran away. It's an evasion. Okay, if with the right evidence and we could prove the case, the athlete will be sanctioned appropriately. Okay, so apart from this, number 5 up to number 11 is applicable to not only athletes, but also their athlete support personnel. Okay, athlete support personnel can be anyone ranging from the coaches, medical doctors, and so on. Okay, anyone that is involved in the anti-doping in the sporting ecosystem of the athlete. So we know that doping is not straightforward. Okay, so rarely, sometimes the decision to dope is a clear and easy for an athlete. Okay, because athletes, they go through vulnerable moments. Okay, being an athlete is not easy. It could be sometimes be very highly pressurized situation for the athlete, and doping is often the result of multifactorial issues. Okay, and decision-making scenarios are complex and related to vulnerability moments, and these vulnerable moments can actually lead to justifying the doping behavior. So this is the reason why, okay, anti-doping, in anti-doping there's 3 main functions. Okay, number 1 is anti-doping education, number 2 is testing. For an example, we are collecting either the blood samples or the urine samples, and number 3 is results management. Results management happen if the athlete is found to be violating any of the anti-doping rules violations, or we have found any prohibited substance in their sample. Okay, so now, before we take sample from the athlete, okay, an athlete's first experience with anti-doping should be education. Okay, we need to provide the athlete with the appropriate anti-doping education. We will not collect sample from the athlete before giving a proper anti-doping education, because we want the athlete to know what is clean sport, what is anti-doping, why are we collecting their urine sample. Once we have collected the urine sample, what happens to this sample? Okay, where do we transfer their sample? Where do we send their sample? When it have reached the lab, what kind of analysis will be done on the samples? Okay, once the analysis is done, if the sample is found to be positive, okay, in anti-doping we call it adverse analytical finding, what will happen to their career? So this is very much important that we stress anti-doping education, and this anti-doping education have been personalized with value based. Okay, the reason why we put in value based is because when an athlete faces a vulnerable moment, we strongly believe that these values will help them to make the right decision. Okay, because values are part of our personality, and when they are faced at the crossroad, okay, whether they're going to take the right path or the wrong path, we strongly believe that the values will guide them. So some of the vulnerability moments that we found the athletes are facing, for an example, when they are entering a high level competition, which means they are suddenly qualifying for a senior national team or qualifying for Commonwealth Games and so on. Okay, it could be vulnerable moments because they really want to qualify, and there's a possibility that they could do. Okay, or they're changing clubs or training environment. There's a pressure to win. Okay, we already know this particular athlete is a medical prospect and definitely will win. Okay, so the pressure is the country is hoping for the athlete to bring back a medal. Their respective national federation is putting all hope on them. For an example, okay, the pressure to win, and there's injury. Okay, attempts. Okay, we injuries. We had a case previously. I think a couple of years back in the country. It's a weightlifting athlete. This weightlifting athlete is a medal. It's a medal contributor to the country. Okay, each time he goes for weightlifting championships, he will definitely win. Okay, bring back medal, either number one, number two, whether it's gold, silver, or bronze. So one day, this athlete was found injured. Okay, he had knee injury and back injury because it's weightlifting. Okay, so what he did was to recover from the injuries fast. Okay, so he took a shortcut. He took some steroid pills, which was later found, okay, as a prohibited substance in his urine sample. Now, when we investigated the reason why he took this shortcut, because we call him as an elite athlete. Okay, he's an international level athlete. He have been provided anti-doping education many, many times, and he shouldn't have gone down that road. So, but we investigate nevertheless, and the reason is because he wanted to make a quick comeback from his injuries, because when he's injured, he's not allowed to train, he's not allowed to go for any competitions, and when he's not allowed to go for competitions, his allowances is cut in half. Okay, and so there was monetary issues. Okay, he needed the money. So this is one of the reasons, the vulnerable moment that this athlete faced. Okay, he needed quick money. He needed to get back on track. He needed to get back on his court, on his weightlifting, and he needed to travel fast so that his allowances will be provided consistently. Okay, this is one example of the vulnerable moments. So doping control, most often we hear or we see, okay, during a major event like Olympics or Paralympics, we see people with a vest and behind them is written as doping control. Okay, so doping control is not necessarily limited to sample collection. It can be the process, okay, from the sample collection up to results management. Results management is where we decide when we process the results, either positive or negative, decide on the sanctions and other proceedings, okay, related to the anti-doping rules violation. So who can test athletes? Okay, the NADOS, the National Anti-Doping Organization, for an example, ADAMAS, we can test the athletes. NOCs, RADOS, IFs, major event organizations, WADA, and also delegated third parties, for example, the International Testing Agency. On who can be tested? Any athlete jurisdiction of any anti-doping organization and subject to their anti-doping rules. So these this is what happens during the doping control process. Okay, when we are collecting sample from the athlete, okay, number one, we have athlete selection. Okay, we don't simply call any athlete. Okay, before the start of the year, we have a risk assessment. Okay, for an example, at Adamas, we build a risk assessment. Risk assessment will involve the sports and the athletes. Okay, we see whether the athlete at what level of performance he is currently at what stage of his level of his athlete career that he is most probably will dope. What are his incentives? How much wages, salary, or sponsors that he's getting? The sports that he's in, does it have any history of ADRVs, violations, history of suspension sanctions before in the country or worldwide? In terms of the sports, what kind of prohibited substance are mostly found in the athlete? Now, for example, weightlifting could be steroid, could be sibutramine, for an example. Okay, what are the different prohibited substance that mostly associated with this sports? So, and then we will notify the athlete. So once notified, this athlete, they need to report to the doping control station immediately, unless they have very valid reasons. For an example, they are warming down, or they're attending the medal ceremony, or they have a press conference, or they are injured, okay, and need to seek medical treatment immediately. But once notified, they will always be under the observation of the doping control officer. Okay, and then the sample collection happens. Okay, we collect the sample. Make sure everything is filled up in the doping control form, DCF. DCF is very, very important because later on, if there's a positive case, this DCF will serve as a very, very, very important evidence. And then chains of custody, okay, we need to transfer in a proper custody the samples, okay, without any tampering, with validity to the lab analysis, and then the lab will release the results. Okay, it could be positive, it could be negative. So this is some pictures on urine sample collection. When we are collecting the urine, for an example, okay, so for a male athlete, we will send in a male doping control officer. Okay, so in the toilet or in the cubicle, the male DCO, doping control officer, needs to stand by the side of the male athlete to actually witness that the urine actually comes from the athlete. Okay, the reason why we need to witness, because previously there have been situations where athletes they actually inserted in a plastic someone else's urine, and where they were actually trying, actually when we were trying to collect the sample, it just fell off, in the toilet. And there was once instance what reached the lab was not a urine sample, but instead it was beer. Okay, to avoid all these situations, so now we have to witness during sample collection. Okay, so for example, when we are taking a sample from a female athlete, okay, so the female, the athlete need to lower their pants up to the knees level, and also they need to stand in front of the female doping control officer so that they can actually witness, okay, the sample collection. And when it comes to with minors, for example, those below 18 years old, okay, we are always sending representative and observer, okay, to see the to an athletes. Sorry, we call it a athlete's representative, okay, to observe this year, because we do not want any other issues later on, okay, in regards to this minors. Minors in those below 18 years old in the code is known as protected persons. So again, so after all this, okay, when the sample is collected, okay, we send to the lab analyze it, and the results comes positive. Okay, so now the prohibited substance is found in the athlete's sample. So again, we will apply this principle of strict liability. When a prohibited substance is found in your urine sample or in your blood sample, the athlete is solely responsible for everything they use and that is found in their body, regardless whether there was an intention to cheat or not, or if the athlete is at fault. Okay, so I have a case here which we always share in regards to this. strict liability principle. So now we all know Maria Sharapova. Some of us are her fan. We have watched her in action. So she was found to have meldonium, okay, as a prohibited substance in her sample, and then she was given a 2-year ban by the International Tennis Federation. So now what happens is this prohibited list is updated every year. Okay, it's updated every year annually. So she had been using this meldonium for many years before, and in 2016, WADA added meldonium into the prohibited list, which she was unaware of. Okay, so she was continuing using this substance, and it was found in her sample. So after that, she made appeal at the CAS, and from 15 months, it was reduced. From 2 years doping ban, it was reduced to 15 months. Okay, so again, just now I did mention there is 11 anti-doping rules violation. So this is also an example. For an example, if you're an elite athlete, you are in our registered testing pool, RTP athlete. Very important. The reason why you are included in our RTP, our registered testing pool, is either because your ranking have been improving in your particular sport, okay, you have been climbing the ranking, or you have been doing particularly well in your sports. So when you are performing well in your sports, we pay extra attention to you. So we will include you in our RTP, registered testing pool. So when you are registered testing, when you're part of our registered testing pool, you need to let us know where will you be in the 24 hours time period. Okay, from 5 a.m. up to 12 midnight. You would want to know, where do you train? Are you traveling for your tournament? Where is your home address? If you're still studying, what is university address? Where is your training center? And so on. So you also need to provide us with a 1 hour testing slot. Okay, 1 hour testing slot where we can come and see you to collect your sample outside of your competition. For an example, you might be training, so we will visit you in a training center or at your home. So if let's say you say, okay, my recommended testing slot is from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. So we come knock on your door at 3 p.m. and you were not found to be in your place. Okay, we will call it as a whereabouts failure, because you told us about your whereabouts. You already update your whereabouts in the system. Before we come and see you, we'll open up the calendar and look at your whereabouts. Okay, you are at home, so we'll go to your home, we'll knock on your door, and you're not at home. Okay, so in a 12-month period, if this happens 3 times, we call it 3 strikes, and there's a possibility that you can ban up to 2 years. Okay, this is an example of a whereabouts failure. It's also an anti-doping rules violation. So not necessarily, okay, we have found a prohibited substance in your sample, but it could be also because of a whereabout failure. Okay, so here's an example. This is Christian Coleman. Okay, he's a clean athlete, never found any prohibited substance in his sample, but he was not where he said he would be in his whereabouts records. Okay, so 3 times in 2019, anti-doping officers were actually looking for him. Okay, never failed a drug test, but the 3 missed tests have earned him a 2-year suspension from competition. Okay, so he was given a 2-year ban, and after appealed at the CAS, it was reduced to 18 months, but yet he still missed the Tokyo Olympics. So when it comes to sanctions, okay, all this prohibited substance, it will be divided into specified substance or non-specified substance. Okay, this is very much important for those who are in results management. Okay, results management, when we know, we will open first. Okay, when the lab releases the results, we will try to see what is the name of the prohibited substance. Okay, for an example, it's written there. Sorry, it's written there as AAS, okay, anabolic adrenergic steroid. Okay, so we'll open up the prohibited list for that particular year, and we see it falls under which class. Okay, so once we know under which class, okay, whether it's a non-specified substance or specified substance, for an example, steroid is a non-specified substance. Now we know that it will lead to 4 years. Okay, and then we will do some investigation. okay, to see whether the athlete actually have some intention to cheat. Okay, if we know, if we can demonstrate that the athlete have actually have intention to cheat, okay, the prohibited substance was taken intentionally, and it's actually have increased his sporting performance, we could actually add another 2 years to this 4 years, so it will become 6 years. But if the athlete can prove, okay, burden of proof is on the athlete, that he has no intention at all to cheat, okay, it was unintentional, so the 4 years can become 2 years, okay, and so on. So that's why for results management, so whoever handles the results management task, and later on, okay, when the athlete requests for a hearing or appeal, okay, this knowledge is very much important, okay, on the sanctions, the sanction 3 and the prohibited list, specified substance, non-specified substance, origin of substance, intention, no significant fault, and so on, is very much important, especially for those legal professionals, because hearing is often hearing is often chaired by legal professionals, even though sometimes it's a 3% hearing panel. We could have a medical doctor there, but usually another 2% will be from the legal background. Why? Because there's a need to interpret all this and hand down the appropriate sanctions, okay, to deliberate on this case, and then finally hand down the appropriate sanction for the athletes. Okay, most often when athletes is found to have violated any anti-doping rules violations, okay, and anti-doping organization, in this case ADAMAS, and the athlete, we can be found in opposite situations, okay, but the objective of the whole system is actually to arrive as the best outcome for the athlete. Okay, this is very, very important. That's why we say that we protect the athlete's right from time to time. Okay, we will usually, before we proceed further with the suspension, we will ask the athlete whether he wants to admit within 20 days, or do he want to go to hearing to defend himself, to challenge the results provided by the lab. Okay, so some of the consequences, okay, in sanctions, it will definitely impact, 100% will impact the athlete's career, okay, because they would have been banned. So for an example, if the athlete is banned in a particular sport, let's say he's banned in badminton, can he go for cricket or tennis? No. Okay, well, a ban is a ban. Okay, he cannot go for another sport. Or if he's banned in Malaysia, okay, can he go to Thailand or Singapore to compete in that respective countries? No, he cannot, okay, start representing different countries, because we have a suspension list on our website, okay, and we also respect other countries suspension list as well. So sometimes before we have some tournaments and so on and we know that we'll be receiving athletes from certain countries, we'll usually email that particular country, the ADO, anti-doping organization, and see which athletes are currently going through suspension, which athlete have been released from suspension, and so does the International Federation. Okay, they will also email ADAMAS, and they'll give us a list of athletes' names to check whether any of them are on our suspension list. Okay, it's very important that they are banned in the sport, so that we can maintain the clean sport environment, and at the same time they also will be prohibited from competing, coaching, or working with athletes in any other capacity in a different sport. Okay, so apart from giving some very much impact consequences to their athlete career, it also have consequences on their physical health. Depending on the substance, there will be some changes. For an example, steroid, some heavy changes. Okay, long-term usage can have some consequences on their physical health, and definitely will also have consequences on their mental health as well. Okay, so here are some of the other consequences. Okay, you can see it on the screen. Psychological consequences, financial penalties, social consequences, family and friends. At ADAMAS, I actually handle the results management function. Not an easy task, very dramatic, because at times I have to call the athletes to let them know that they have been tested, their sample have been collected on so and so on date, and now that the results are back and they're back from the lab, and we have found them, the sample positive. Okay, most athletes, especially those at their peak, especially those who are at the current national training program and so on, the government is investing much, so it's not an uh, easy thing for them to digest. It could be a dramatic moment, and the psychological consequences are very much true because I've seen it myself. How much they feel the guilt, they go through some phase, individual phase on their own. There's a possibility they get isolated from the sport and team. When an athlete is found to be violating any of the anti-doping rules violation, next the media will pick up and so on. So nobody wants to be associated with them. Okay, nobody wants to pick up their phone calls. um, yes, and they also feel isolated from their own team members. And sometimes in some places, there are financial penalties. I've seen that they have to return the money they've won or the funding that they have received. Some athletes, their sponsorship will be stopped and so on. Okay, and again, there's family and friends. At this age, at this submet age, social media, where everything has a digital footprint. Okay, very easily when an athlete is found to be violating any anti-doping rules violation, the moment we announce it, very quickly, their fans will look for their family members. They can actually highlight who are behind these athletes, who are their coaches, and so on. Okay, it is not an easy thing to go through when an athlete has been found to be violating any of the anti-doping rules, or they are actually going through the suspension list. Trust is definitely broken, especially for athletes who are known as medal prospect in the country, because they are known as national celebrity. For some time they're known as national heroes. So it must be so. And for this very purpose, the athletes are consistently and constantly being provided anti-doping education. So I think we have come to the end of my presentation. Okay, terima kasih. Terima kasih is how we say it in the country. And thank you for listening to me. And I hope my presentation, my sharing today have benefited everyone. Thank you.
Nages, Terima Kase, thank you so very, very much. That was really, really very detailed and very helpful. We're going to open up to questions. But one of the things, just to pull together what Nages has shown us, is that there is a lot of difficulty behind the glamour, because for us as spectators, we see the glamour of elite sportsmen and women. We see, their heroes and heroines, but then the difficulty. I remember that in Singapore, we were in Kuala Lumpur, we were like freaking out over how do you go to use the bathroom and somebody is standing there watching you just to collect your sample. How are you going to wee? That, it might be really difficult, but they have to do all of this, and the invasion of their privacy as well. And we saw bits of that when with the Semenya judgment out of the European, the Court of Justice of the EU. And so it's difficult and it is tough. But this is what we need to do, or what they need to do, if we're going to enjoy clean sports. And so we're open to questions, and I guess it has graciously agreed to take a couple of questions. Does anybody have any questions? Considering the need for invigilation is hair sample. Let me read Ashton's. So Ashton says, considering the need for invigilation, is hair sample a common method of sample collection? Ashton is not ready to be weeing in front of anybody, so he's asking. Ashton participated in our training out of Kuala Lumpur, but he is a resident in Singapore, and he's a member of Maxwell Chambers. So he does a lot with arbitration. Ashton, thank you very much. Nages, should you want to? So we'll keep Ashton's question effectively is, will her sample do? And so while you're thinking of that, should we take Nuhu's question as well, so you can deal with both of them? Or do you want to take Ashton's question first before Nuhu comes on board?
Can I answer Ashton's first?
Then yes, of course. And then we'll take Nuhu's question. Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, hello Ashton. So thank you for asking. As for at the moment, there's only 2 samples to collect from the athletes. One is the blood sample and one is the urine sample for anti-doping purpose, for doping control purpose. But later on, for other cases, as I mentioned before, there is other violations as well, from 2.1 up to 2.11. So when we go into intelligence and investigations, okay, it's a subunit that we are now very much giving our time and effort in setting up in all the national anti-doping organizations. There's a possibility that we might also take hair samples and so on, but it will not be under the jurisdiction of the anti-doping organization, but it could be under the jurisdiction of the enforcement agencies that we work with. But as for the anti-doping organizations, right now we only have 2, blood and urine.
Okay, Ashton, that helps. Thank you very much, Nages. Nuhu, please, do you want to unmute and maybe switch on your camera if that's okay? And then
yes, please.
Please.
Yeah, thank you so much for your very exciting presentation. I think it's an interesting area. And but I was just curious to find out whether are there, from what you submitted, it appears that there is only when an issue is raised about an athlete or when there's some suspicion, that is when you go on to do the testing. Is it possible? Do you have instances where you do pre-engagement in the sporting activity test to determine where the person is even qualified to actually undertake such activity in order to forestall, so as to make all athletes aware that these are the standards expected of them? Even though you may be carrying out the education, but like you rightly pointed out, it's possible that someone still want to intentionally cheat. Others don't actually intentionally, embark on trying to outsmart the system. But is there a system whereby, or is it possible to, if it's not there, to consider ensuring that there is a pre-activity or pre-event assessment, so that if there is anything like that, then the person could even be, prevented, instead of the person rising to the top and he's being brought down by virtue of something like that happening? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nuhu, for your question. Okay, now I'm happy that the presentation that I've given actually actually prompted this question, because this is something that we do. In fact, for example, for especially those for high-risk sports. Okay, for an example, in Malaysia, we have a series of positive cases for weightlifting. So at the national level games, before the athletes actually go to compete at the national level, before the pre-event, we actually go and collect their samples as well, so that only the clean athletes are later on allowed to compete in the actual event. Okay, this is very important, because sometimes when they go for their qualifying rounds, they are given very, very short time. Okay, for an example, just for an example, their weight category available is 89 kg. Okay, but sorry, they are from the 89 kg category, but what is available now is 69 kg. Okay, so now they only have like 2 weeks to reduce their weight from 89 to 69, and this is a vulnerable moment. And some athletes, based on our case studies, they do take sibutramine. Okay, especially female athletes, because they want to reduce their weights very fast. Sibutramine is at the moment is banned in the country since 2010, but it can be still found in our slimming teas, in slimming coffees, in slimming chocolates, and some of our female athletes tend to use it, okay, to reduce weight. And when they reduce weight, they can actually increase their sports performance. So No's prospect is actually very correct. Okay, there's a reason why. There's a good reason why we need to collect samples pre-event. Okay, to actually raise the awareness and to ensure that everyone have a clean sports environment to compete later.
I think, no, thank you very much, Nages. And that question dovetails into Michelle's, because before I come to Romit, Michelle says, at what level are Malaysian athletes subject to anti-doping tests? And when do they start receiving education on anti-doping? And so that's quite close to Nuhu's question. Nages, do you want to quickly say something before we go to Romit?
Sure. So in the country we conduct at least on a year that we have national games going on, the samples can amount between 300 to 500. It can go up to 600 to 800 samples at times. So out of these samples, we usually will have 1 to 2 anti-doping rules violation cases. Okay, mostly it's AAF, adverse analytical finding, where we found prohibited substance in their samples. So each time, okay, during a national game, if we have 0 cases, okay, we have collected, for example, let's say 300 samples, and we have 0 cases, we usually would like to credit this success towards our anti-doping education, because we travel across the country to give this anti-doping education, and it is made mandatory. Okay, for example, as you know, WADA, they have ADAL, the platform, okay, where the modules are available, international level athlete module, there's talented level athlete module. Okay, we translate them to the local language, okay, to give a better understanding to our athletes. So before they come to the event, to the local event, they need to go through the module and produce the education certificate to us. And same goes to Asian Games. Last year, before all the athletes travel to Asian Games, they need to produce a mandatory anti-doping education certificate. And for next year also, it's the same thing. Okay, so recently the Asian Youth Games in Bahrain, that is the same case. So not only in our country, the anti-doping education is important, so it is now made mandatory worldwide.
Thank you very much. Romit, do you want to quickly ask your question?
Yes, please. Thank you so much for the lovely presentation. I was wondering that within the appeals process, especially with the example that you gave us of Sharapova, is it always an appeal that goes to an arbitration tribunal, or is there also room for mediation or a more flexible procedure?
Usually after the hearing and the reasoned decisions are announced, so the next process will be appeal. Okay, so far there is no mediation or arbitration. Okay, so depending on the level of athlete, it could be an international level athlete, so they will go towards CAS. Okay, while the rest of the athletes, for example, national level athletes, the appeal panel will be by the respective the respective anti-doping organizations, okay, within the country. Okay, not all the athletes will go to CAS.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Romit, for that question, because it appears as though different regions are beginning to set up almost like an appeals for, their own appeals thing, because of the cost of going to CAS, and CAS facing this whole question around its relationship with the Swiss courts and European law and all of that. So maybe the Asian region might begin to think around that as well. Anyway, Nages, thank you so very much. That was really, really, really helpful. That was very detailed. We're very, very grateful. Thanks for honoring our invitation. I'm sure that we will do a follow-up, because this is really interesting and engaging, and a new area as well for quite a number of our own members of our centers and our students. We want them to get involved. And it was good that you plugged lawyers that were useful to this process. So hopefully that would help. Thank you so very much. And thank you to all those who attended. Nages, thank you very, very much. So that brings our webinar today to an end. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.